Hey crafty friends, it's Lisa, your DIY diva. Today I've got a bunch of Dollar Tree crafts to help inspire you and get you ready for a brand new year of crafty. I love these frames from the Dollar Tree. So I believe this is actually supposed to be a dry erase board, but I'm using it as a picture frame. They are just so pretty and I love the detail on the top of the frame. And it's really easy to remove the dry erase portion on the inside of the frame. Everything just comes out and then you can use it as a picture frame or a dry erase board if that's what you wanted to do. I don't want the gold coloring for my project. So what I'm going to do is take the Dixie Belle French linen chalk paint again, and I'm going to paint the entire frame with the chalk paint. The French linen is a gray. I would say this is probably a medium gray. And like all of the other projects I've been doing, it only took one coat of the Dixie Belle paint to completely cover all of the gold on the frame. Now, once that dried, I wanted to use some Rub and Buff to give it some highlight. And this Rub and Buff is in Silver Leaf, so it's a very shiny silver. And if you've never used Rub and Buff before, you don't have to use very much. Now I have a sponge dauber on the end of this ink blotter. I don't know what this tool is called. I will leave a link to it in the description box in case you want to check it out for yourself. And I just put a little bit of the Silver Leaf Rub and Buff onto the sponge part of the dauber. And then I just used it as a highlighter for the frame. The Silver Leaf looks really nice against the French linen paint. It looks really pretty. Now, I did decide to use that dry erase portion for this project, and this actually did take 2 coats of the Dixie Belle paint to completely cover it. Now, I had these tiny little letters. I believe I got this on Temu, however you say that, and they're just unfinished wood lettering. So I took some of that French linen paint and I painted all of the letters. Now, here's a quick tip. If you're painting letters like this or something super small, if you put them onto some sort of tape, this is the frog tape, it gives it a sticky background to keep the letter in place so you don't end up painting your fingers. And I forgot to tell you the background that I painted the dry erase portion with, that was in Dixie Belle Fluff. And my lettering, that was also in the French linen. And I just used a little bit of Mod Podge to secure each of the letters in place. And if you don't push down the letters like really firm at first, there is a little bit of play so you can maneuver them and move them around so that you can get them where you want them to be without committing to it. Isn't that cute? That's gonna be so pretty. And once the lettering was dry and the Mod Podge had dried, all I had to do was put that dry erase board back into the frame and then secure the back on. And there's my finished sign. And here it is in my decor. I love how this turned out. I have always wanted to make a sign that says this. I was so excited when I went to Dollar Tree and saw this heart. And it says Our Love on it, but I'm not going to use it like this. No, I'm going to be doing a Pottery Barn dupe because they have a heart shape like this and it's about $30. So when I found this wooden heart at Dollar Tree, I was so excited. And I was even more excited because the heart actually had a wood grain pattern. I thought that was so pretty. You just can't sand too much because then you'll sand off the wood grain pattern. And once I had it all sanded, I mixed a couple of paints together. I used some country tan along with some antique white, and that's by Folk Art, and I just mixed them together. I want to have this emulate the look of the Pottery Barn heart. I did add in a little bit of salt wash because I do want this paint to have some texture because I want to add extra texture to the heart. And if you don't have salt wash, you can use plaster of Paris, you can use baking soda, whatever you have on hand. And once I had the paint the consistency that I wanted it to be, then I just started painting the heart. I did make sure to get all the way around the sides first. That makes it easier when you're painting the top of the heart. And I think you can see the texture that this paint gives. And again, I am using a pretty heavy-handed painting technique because I want the texture. And this is what it looked like when it dried. Next, I came back with some of that antique white acrylic paint and I lightly brushed or dry brushed it all over the heart. I really paid attention to the sides where it joins to the top to give a little bit more of a highlighted appearance. And here is my Pottery Barn dupe or Pottery Barn DIY that I made for $1.25 instead of spending $30. I think this is so pretty and there's so many different ways that you can use it in your decorating. I have this crate from Dollar Tree. I love these things. I have so many of them. But not all Dollar Tree crates are the same size. And you're looking for crates that are similar in size, I would highly encourage you to check out the sizes of the crates you have before making a purchase. Now I'm going to start with this Country Tan paint, and this is by Apple Barrel. So I'm going to paint every part of this crate with the Country Tan paint. The inside, the outside, the bottom, everywhere is going to be covered with this paint color. Now, once that had completely dried, I came back with Folk Art Crackle Coat. This stuff is so much fun to work with. And I did a pretty heavy coat of the crackle medium over top the outside of the crate. Once that was completely dry, I came back with Folk Art Vintage White paint. So I'm going to paint a coat of the Vintage White over top of the Country Tan. And I've had the best results with the crackle coat if I keep all of my strokes going in one direction. I did go ahead and make sure to get the top edge of the crate as well. And you can see the crackling is already happening on my crate. Now, once the top coat had dried, I came back with some distressing ink. And this is walnut stain, and I use that around the edges of my crate. So the top and the sides and even the bottom, but I want to keep the middle portion of the crate original and not have any of the stain on it. And I wanted to have thinner ribbon with polka dots, but I didn't have any. So I decided to see if I could make my own polka dotted ribbon by cutting down some cream color ribbon that I had. And then I took some red acrylic paint and just put dots on it. I know it's not the same as store-bought, but you know, you use what you have, right? So while that was drying, I took some other ribbon and I glued that around the crate. And once I had the larger ribbon in place, then I came back with some fabric that I cut down to make it look like a ribbon. And I glued that in the center of the ribbon that was already on place on the crate. And once I had the fabric in place, then it was time to put the polka dotted ribbon on. And I just glued that on top of the other fabric and secured it to the back of the crate as well. Next, I came back with some fabric that I had made into a bow, and I hot glued a couple of different size bows to the front of the crate. This is going right in the center. I think it might look kind of nice too if the bow was offset and maybe like on one side of the crate. That would look nice too. I did want my bows to have little tiny tails, so I ended up gluing those on separately. And I just pushed the fabric up to make it look like it was wrinkled a little bit on the crate. First, I did it with the homespun fabric, and then I did have enough of my homemade polka dotted ribbon that I was able to do that as well. Next, I had some wooden hearts that again have been in my stash for a long time, so I painted them different shades of red, and then I used the distressing ink all around the edges. Now I wanted to give this a little bit of a rustic look, so I just flinged some paint. This is the Vintage White paint. I just kind of splattered that onto the hearts. Then I took some Dollar Tree floral foam and I tilted it at an angle into the crate. And then I used some of this It's like raffia, but it's not. I don't know what this is really, but it's almost like really thin strips of wood that's kind of curly. I got it at Michael's. If I can think of what it's called, then I will put a link in the description box for you. But this is something really fun. It's a little bit different than Spanish moss, and I really like the look that it gives because it's just that lighter color. And I just glued that to the floral foam that's in the crate. Once I was finished with that, I used some hot glue and secured the hearts that I had painted into the crate. I started with the larger hearts first, and then I moved on to the smaller hearts. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way how to do this. Just do what you like and what looks good to you. I think that's really cute. I love this. I love how it turned out. It was a little bit of work, but it was completely worth it in the end. I think this is a great addition to my Valentine decorations. A few months ago, I think it was around Mother's Day, I was at Dollar Tree and I found a smaller version of these mirrors. Just like it is, it already has that high-end look. So I didn't have to do anything. I could literally just take the mirror, put it on my shelf, and use it for styling a part of my decor. So who knows how much Dollar Tree prices are at the time you're watching this, but if you can find this mirror at Dollar Tree, I think it's definitely worth it. It's very pretty. Like I said, it's very high-end. Three of these solar lights from the Dollar Tree, and then I took some floral foam and put it into a galvanized container that I got from Goodwill. So I just secured the floral foam down into the container. And next I had these floral stems that were leftovers from another project, and they're just grass and they have these pretty purple flowers on the top. I will leave a link in the description box below in case you wanted to get some for yourself. These are really nice and they're very plastic, so they will be just fine outside. So I fluffed out the floral stems, and then I used my hot glue gun to put glue on the bottom portion of each stem and then just secured it next to the floral foam. So it's going to go all the way around the foam. And this took 6 of those individual grass stem pieces to get this full look. Next, I just took the solar lights and pushed them down into the floral foam. Now the one in the center, I left that as tall as it could be. And then I cut a little bit off of the other 2 and put those in kind of at an angle on either side of the first one. And this is what it looks like outside. I think it is so pretty. I love that grass greenery. It looks so real. And for you to get the full effect, this is what it looks like at night. The solar lights at Dollar Tree are really nice. Now I got this really awesome planter at Dollar Tree. I have never seen these before, and when I saw it, I saw a beehive. So tipping it upside down, I used my Dremel to remove some of the plastic from the bottom because the bottom is now going to be the top of my project. Then I came back with the Dixie Belle Rebel paint and I painted that all over the planter. Doesn't that just look like a beehive even like that? And again, while the Rebel paint was still wet, I did come back with the King's Gold paint and I painted that on top. I did random lines, so it's a pretty heavy coat of paint that I'm using, but that's what's going to give extra texture and depth and different shades of the yellow on my beehive. And I just worked my way around the planter until I got it how I wanted it to be. And I really like how that looks. I think it looks like a beehive, don't you? And because I have a lot of these gold glue sticks, I thought it would be fun to have honey dripping all the way around the top edge of this planter. This hot glue is a little bit darker and more of a gold color, but I think it works with this project. Then I came back with some silk flowers. Some of these are from Dollar Tree, some of them are from Michael's or Hobby Lobby. They're just flowers that I've had for a very long time because I have a lot of artificial flowers. And I picked out ones that reminded me of spring and that I thought bees would like, and I just put them down into the center of the planter. This is why I removed the top with the Dremel. It worked really well, and now I've created this awesome beehive vase that I can put flowers in. I think this is so pretty, and I think you can hear it in my voice. Even now, looking at this, I am just so happy with how this turned out. I think it's adorable, and I'm really excited to use it in my decorating. Now, this is a Dollar Tree Easter bunny. These are so much fun for Easter, but also for other crafts too. So what I'm going to do is I am going to remove a lot of the stuff that's on this bunny. So his arms, they are going away, his feet are going away, and even his ears. I am so glad that Dollar Tree has been bringing back these bunnies because they are so cute and they are so much fun to craft with. Now, when I was removing the arms, I was trying to be as careful as I could because I don't want to remove too much of the fabric. It did create little holes on the sides, but that's okay because look at all that fabric I have to work with. And then I carefully removed the center section of the ears. So pretty much just the pink section is what I want to get rid of. Next, I came back with my hot glue gun and I hot glued the remaining ears down so that they're facing towards the front of the bunny and covering up his face. So here is my shape, and I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to make. I am going to make a bee. So I'm going to use the Dixie Belle paint and I'm going to just kind of pounce this on to the bunny. And I thought it would be easier to use this kind of a tool to get the paint on, but I did find that using a paintbrush worked just as well. And as you can see, I'm starting with the black areas of the bee first. I wasn't sure how many stripes I was going to put on this bee, but having basically the 2 stripes and then finishing off the bottom with the black seemed to work really well. Now, once the black had dried, I came back with the King's Gold paint again, and I filled in the blank spot. So I'm using the King's Gold to be the yellow portion of the bee. And it did take 2 coats of both the black and the King's Gold paint to get full coverage on this project. Next, I had to figure out something to use for the bee's wings, and I didn't have any fabric, but I did have this canvas that I got from Dollar Tree. So I removed the canvas portion and then I cut it down so all of those frayed edges are going to be gone. I want to have a clean part of the canvas for this part of my project. And I wasn't sure how big each of the wings should be. So I decided this is probably, I don't know, 5 by 7. And I thought it would work really well to basically cut out a heart because that's going to be one of the wings for my bee. And once I had one of the hearts, then I just used that as a pattern to create the second heart or the other set of wings for the bee. By this time the paint had dried, so I did want to add a bow to the bee. So I used some Dollar Tree ribbon and I put that around the neck. So that's going to kind of separate the head from the body. And for my wings, I did use a Sharpie marker around the edges to make it look like it was stitched a little bit. And then I just used some hot glue and I secured the wings to the back of the bee. That is so cute. Next, I made one of my favorite rustic bows. And I put the bow off to the side of where the ribbon is on the bee. And the bee had to have antennas as well. So I had some craft wire and I just looped that around a paintbrush to rolled up towards the top. And I also used the paintbrush to bend the wire a little bit so it's just kind of whimsical. And then I used a little bit of hot glue to secure each of the antennas to the top of the bee. Now I really want to say ta-da! Because that is how I feel with this project. I think this turned out so stinking cute. Oh my goodness, this is so adorable. If you're going to be doing any kind of bee decor this year, I would highly encourage you to give this a try. It was really easy and it was really fun. I'm just so happy with how my Dollar Tree bee turned out. I'm going to be making several signs with these pieces, but for this project, I'm only going to be using carrots from 3 of the signs. And the first thing that I did was carefully disassemble each of the signs because I want to be very careful so I can have each of these pieces for different projects. And like I said, I'm only going to be using the carrot for this one. Now, once I had the signs all disassembled, I took the carrots and removed the bows from each of them. I also wanted to sand them down a bit. I want to make sure that the edges are nice and smooth. So I used my little hand sander and I sanded down all of the rough edges of the carrots, both the front and the back, as well as all the way around the sides. Next, I came back with some Deco Art Americana acrylic paint, and this is in the color Burnt Orange. This is what I'm going to be using for the carrots. I made sure to get the front as well as all of the sides. I didn't worry about the top portion. I'm going to paint that green a little bit later. So I just wanted to make sure all 3 of the carrots were painted the same color, which is the burnt orange, on the front as well as the sides. When I sanded down the words and the lettering, the paper on the front of the carrots, I wasn't sure if I was going to use this side, but the orange paint covered it up well enough that this was perfect because on the back of the signs it had holes, so the front was the best part to use. And once the burnt orange was dry, I came back with marsh green paint. Now I'm using this on the top of the carrot. So where the green would be anyway, that was what I painted green. And I do know we're getting close to Easter, so hopefully you will be able to find these signs at the Dollar Tree. They also have the larger carrots. You could do this with that as well, but once I have all of my carrots painted, then I'm going to be putting them onto another Dollar Tree piece. And with all of the prices seeming to be going up at Dollar Tree in the next couple of days, if this is a project you'd like to make, you may want to get to your Dollar Tree before March 29th to find these pieces at a lower price. I don't know if all of their wood signs are going to change, but it seems like a lot of the pieces at Dollar Tree are going to be going up just a little bit. Now, once I had all of the green painted on the carrots, I did come back with some folk art antique white paint. And using a 1-inch chip brush, I lightly brushed some of that cream colored paint onto the carrots. I did also go ahead and do the top portion of the carrots as well. Now here's the sign that's going to be the background for my carrots. And I got this at Dollar Tree last year. I really wanted to use that cork, but I just didn't get time to use it. So I'm going to be using the back of this tag. It's like a tag. I know they have these at Dollar Tree right now. And the reason I picked out this sign was because of the raw wood, because I'm going to be using some stain. This is a gel stain from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to wipe that onto my sign. I put a little bit of the gel stain on, and then using an old rag, I just rubbed the stain into the sign. I did make sure to get the sides, the top and bottom as well. And the gel stain that I'm using, like I said, it did come from Hobby Lobby. This is really affordable. I believe it's either 69 cents or 99 cents. I can't remember, but this is in the color Maple. And by rubbing the stain on, it makes it so that it dries a lot faster. If you don't have gel stain, you could also use just regular stain. Now, after I let that dry for a little bit, I did come back with some more of that antique white paint, and using a larger chip brush, I lightly brushed the cream color paint or antique white onto the tag or sign. By going back and forth across the stained surface, I was trying to get more of an aged look to this and making it look older than something that I just recently stained. And I know it's really hard to see much of the staining now because I've got it covered with all of the cream colored paint. And I did decide to have a little bit darker of a color coming through, so I came back with some burnt umber paint. First I went side to side, and then I came back and went up and down across the tag. Again, I was trying to use just a little bit of the paint, so it's more of a dry brush style. And I came back with, again, the antique white paint just to kind of blend the burnt umber paint back into the background of the tag. I like the layers of painting like this because it almost gives it a plaid appearance, and I thought that gave it a really rustic farmhouse appeal. Now, one thing that I'm going to add to this is a washer. So I have washers that I got from Amazon. They're different size washers, and I want to make this washer look old and kind of rusted and have different layers of paint that's coming off of it. So I took some of that burnt orange paint, and I took that along with another orange, kind of a lighter orange, and I just dabbed that onto the washer. On some areas of the washer, I added a little bit more paint or different colors of paint, and then I set it off to dry. And while the washer was drying, I wanted to add a little bit more to my carrots, so I got a Sharpie marker and I just drew some lines with dots in between around the outer edge of each of the carrots. So my pattern was a line, 3 dots, then a line, then 3 dots, then a line. And I just continued that on all 3 of the carrots, just the outline. Then I took that same cream color paint, added some water, and using a fan brush, I just kind of flicked it onto the carrots. By adding a little bit of water, it makes the paint a lot thinner. So just by using my index finger and tapping the paintbrush, it's going to give those little dots that appear. I also did it on the background sign, the tag, as well as the washer. Then I used hot glue to secure the washer to the top of my sign. Now, if you're going to be doing this, I would recommend not using hot glue, but use something more permanent like E6000. And using my hot glue gun, I did secure each of the carrots onto the tag. So 2 in the back and 1 in the front. Next, I made a simple bow out of a strip of fabric that I had because I didn't have any ribbon. So if you don't have any ribbon to do a bow, you can always take fabric, cut it into a strip that would be like the size of the ribbon you wanted to use, and you can make a bow that way. After deciding how long I wanted the tails of the bow to be, then I did add a dove's tail by folding the tail and cutting off the corner. And I repeated this process on both ends of my bow. I decided I wanted the bow to go onto the carrot bundle, so I secured it with hot glue to the center carrot, and then I used hot glue on the tails to kind of ruffle it up so it looks like they're raised up a little bit on the edge of the outer carrots. Next, I used the original twine that was on this tag, and I just put it back in place on the top of the sign. Now, I was having a little bit of a problem because the washer had come off. This is why I would really encourage you to use a craft glue like E6000 or B7000 to secure that washer in place. The hot glue will not hold it. And once I had that twine in place on the top of the tag, I did use a little bit of hot glue to secure that knot to the front because that was where I wanted it to be. And I wanted to make sure that twine hanger was going to stay in the position I wanted it to be. So I did use some hot glue on the back to keep the twine in place. And I know that was a lot of steps to do to make a sign, but I really like how this turned out. This is actually a pretty easy project. Yes, there are a lot of steps, but I'm very happy with how this turned out. I think it looks really nice. I don't think it looks like something that came from Dollar Tree, and I'm really excited to use this in my decorating this spring. Now, I have been collecting these arrows from Dollar Tree for quite some time now because I see them and I see all kinds of different things that I can do with them. So for this project, I'm going to be using 2 of the bigger arrows as well as one of the smaller ones. Now, I started by painting the 2 larger arrows red. This red was a little bit brighter than I had intended. As you can tell, it's pretty bright, and I wanted to have this have more of an Americana look, so more of a muted color or muted red. And for the shorter arrow, this is going to be going in between the 2 larger arrows. I wanted just regular navy blue, so I painted one side of the arrow the navy blue paint, but I also painted the smaller edge as well. And when the red arrows were dry, I did come back with some cream colored paint. This was an acrylic paint that I mixed with some chalk paint because I wanted to have, again, more of a cream color instead of a bright white. And I used a smaller paintbrush to paint different areas of the arrows. Now, normally I use the big moppy style paintbrushes, but I didn't want to have to tape off on my arrows, so I used a smaller straight edge paintbrush. The bristles are a lot firmer and it makes it so you can get really nice clean lines. They're not exactly perfect, but you can still get really clean lines by using this type of a paintbrush, and you don't have to tape anything off. But if you are a perfectionist, by all means, go ahead and tape off all of the different areas that you're going to be painting with the cream color paint. I want to make these arrows look like firecrackers, so I'm going to be painting them just a little bit differently. So where I have the red on one of the fireworks, I'm going to do the opposite on the other fireworks. So for the first one, I started with the cream at the top, and on this one, I'm starting with the red on the top, and the cream is going to be in the center. I did curve the edges just a little bit to give the illusion that it's more of a round cutout. And yes, the paint is still bright red here, but thanks to the magic of editing, I have the wine color here. These are the same arrows. I had just repainted that red part with the wine acrylic paint. Now for the top of the arrows, or the top of my fireworks, I wanted to have a different color, so what I did was just switch it off. So the longer fireworks, those are going to have a navy blue top. And again, you can see I didn't use any tape, I just used that straight edge paintbrush to get a straighter edge. And on the navy blue arrow, which is the smaller arrow, I used that wine color. And again, using a straight edge paintbrush to get a nice clean line. And you don't necessarily have to use paintbrushes like this. If you have the foam paintbrushes, which you can find at Dollar Tree, those would work as well. I think if I were to use one of those foam brushes, I would probably use painter's tape or electrical tape to really make sure that the line stayed straight. Now, once everything had dried on all of my fireworks, then I came back with a white paint pen and I added some accents. So I started off with the larger fireworks and basically just drew a straight line and then a dot in the center, and I did that around the top of each of the larger fireworks. And then I came back to the wine-colored portion of the fireworks and I did the dotted line again. And then I added something a little bit extra with a squiggly line. Any part of the long portion of my firework, I repeated this step. And on the bottom, I did draw a dotted line. I guess it kind of makes it look like it's stitched. After I was done with the white marker, then I came back with a black marker, and this is just an acrylic marker. It has a fine tip, and on the opposite side, it has a broad tip. So I used that black broad tip on the top and bottom portion of the wine color on the fireworks. And then on the cream colored portions, I did the dotted line just like I did on the top of the firework. I repeated that on the cream color painted side of the firework. Now for the smaller firework, I did decide to go ahead and tape it off because I want to paint some straight lines. And I have this washi tape and it works really well if you're going to be painting acrylic paint onto a wood project. It works very similar to painter's tape, but I like the washi tape, I hope I'm saying that right, because it's thinner and I didn't want to have to cut down painter's tape. So once I had the top portion of the firework taped off, then I came back with some more of that cream colored paint and I just filled in all of the open areas of the top of the firework. And while the paint was still wet, I came back and I removed all of the washi tape. So this is going to give me that patriotic red and white stripe. I love that. That is so pretty. And then I thought it would be really pretty to add some stars to the blue portion of the firework. So I have these different stencils, and after I picked the one out that I wanted with the star shape, then I used that same color cream acrylic paint and I lightly stenciled the stars in place. If you don't have a stencil like this, you could make one if you have a Cricut machine, or you could just cut out the stars if you had the vinyl, or you could even use stickers. If you have star stickers, you could do that. Or if you have wooden stars, you could paint those cream and put them onto the firework as well. There's so many different options for projects like this that you can do, and hopefully I just gave you a whole bunch of ideas. Now, once my fireworks were dry, all the paint was dry, then I secured them together. I had the larger fireworks on the outside, and then I secured the smaller firework to the center. And then I had this adorable gnome that I got from Dollar Tree last year around the 4th of July, and I secured him to the center of all of the fireworks. I did use some tumbling tower blocks to raise him up a little bit. The tumbling tower blocks work perfect for doing things like this, especially if you have bigger pieces. Now, I also had these left over from the 4th of July last year, and they're just so pretty, and I thought it would be really neat to make it look like they're coming out of the bottom of the fireworks. So I just used some hot glue and secured them to the back of my sign. And then I also attached a jute hanger, and this is the finished project. I love this so much. Oh my gosh, this is such a cute addition to my 4th of July crafts. I am so excited with how this turned out. It's much better than I thought it was going to be. So if you have these wooden arrows from Dollar Tree, hopefully you can see how you can turn them into a firecracker. light. And I have these adorable frogs that I got from the Dollar Tree, but I was reading the instructions and it needs to have a chalk paint base first before you can apply the patina paint. So I have 4 of these frogs and I'm going to paint all of them with the Dixie Belle Caviar paint. Now this is black chalk paint, but I'm sure any chalk paint would work. So I was really excited to put on the patina paint. Now this is a copper color. It's very pretty just on its own, just like this. So after I got all finished, this is what my frogs looked like. And I took the patina spray out in the garage and gave the frogs a coat of the spray. Now it says you can spray it on, you can paint it on, and it does take 6 to 12 hours to fully get that patina finish. So I was very excited to see what this would look like. Unfortunately, this is what it ended up looking like. That was nothing like I had hoped. I was really disappointed. So I was hoping that by painting this on, it would work better and I would get that patina look. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So then I resorted to mixing up some of my own acrylic paints to make these frogs look like they had a patina surface. Now, while my frogs may not have turned out exactly like I wanted, they are perfect for using in my outdoor decorating this spring and summer. The frogs are definitely secured to the cake plate from Dollar Tree. So now I'm going to take one of these Dollar Tree solar lights and I'm going to put this into the center. Now these are nice because you can remove the bottom very easily, but I also like to remove the tag protecting the battery to make sure that the solar light is going to work. Then all I did was place it into the center of my frogs. And here is my frog display out on my deck during the day, but at night I love this look. How cute is that? I love how this turned out. This is a really fun and easy Dollar Tree DIY. Now I found this on a Goodwill outing, and when I saw it, I knew it would be perfect for this solar light craft that I wanted to do. And it had these extra embellishments on the outside and they were really pretty. So I do want to save these for an upcoming project. I have no idea what I'm going to use them for, but they're just so pretty. I had to save them. So once I had all of the extras removed from this wooden box, then I did go ahead and use my heat gun to remove the price label because I don't want any of that residual stickiness on this box. Then I came back and used some spackling on all of the holes that had been made. This spackling is nice because it's pink when it's wet, and then as it dries, it turns white. Next, I came back with some Dixie Belle chalk paint and I painted the entire wooden box. And I didn't use anything fancy, just a chip paintbrush to apply the chalk paint. Now, these little holes in the center, these are perfect for the solar lights that I want to use, but I wanted to add a little bit of something extra to the ends. So I found this vinyl on Amazon, and this is to make it look like the ends are wrapped in a metal. The vinyl has a very sticky adhesive backing, so I can continue to use this outside. So I just cut down the vinyl strip and applied it to either end of the wooden box. And I did decide to cover up one of the holes that were in the top of the box. I think this was meant for holding candles, but like I said, I did cover up those end holes that were in the wooden box because I wanted this to look more like a plank of wood that had been wrapped in metal, even though it's not metal, it's vinyl. And I really like the difference in the brown chalk paint and the black vinyl. It gives a little bit of definition to the project. Next, I came back with some Dollar Tree solar lights, and I love these lights. They are so pretty, and they do have them again this year. I got these last year. And one of the things that's really nice is the label comes off so easily. So once I had all of the labels off, then I came back with some B7000 adhesive, and I secured the bottom of the solar lights to my wood box. The B7000 is very similar to E6000 in the fact that this is a craft adhesive, but it also gives a permanent bond, so it will be able to withstand being outside. Then all I had to do was put the tops back on the solar lights, and my project is pretty much done. And this is how it looks when it's all finished during the day. And at night, look at the glow. These are so pretty, and I think they're going to be great for using when we're entertaining on our porch. Have you seen these trays at your Dollar Tree? I love the rectangle trays. They are so much fun to work with. But for me, I wanted it to be gold. So what I did was I used some Dixie Belle chalk paint in black. I think it's caviar. And I painted the silver portion of the tray with one coat of the chalk paint. The bottom of the tray was already black, so that wasn't really an issue. And then I used some wood turnings. Again, I don't even know what these are, some kind of beads. And I used those for the feet of the tray. And I saw a really pretty rectangular tray like this on Pottery Barn, and I thought that this rectangular tray from Dollar Tree would be perfect, that I could emulate the style from Pottery Barn and get something very similar for a lot less money. Now, once my chalk paint had completely dried, then I came back with some Rub and Buff, and this was in the antique gold color, and I just put a coat of Rub and Buff on everything that was basically black on my tray. So the bottom and the top got a coat of Rub and Buff. Now, if you've never worked with Rub and Buff before, this is a really fun product to use. They have different shades of gold, they have bronze, they have silver. It just depends on what color you're looking for. But I've used this on a lot of different projects, and I love the texture that it gives and the appearance that it gives. To apply the Rub and Buff, I did use one of the blending tools that I found on Amazon, and it worked so nicely to get almost a matte finish. It almost gave it kind of a leather type appearance to the Rub and Buff on the tray, and I really love how this looks. I just went in and swirled the blending tool around a little bit to get that appearance. And I found the really cute sprayer at Dollar Tree. And I got a couple of these fake succulent plants on Amazon to complete my tray. And again, this is really similar to one that I found on Pottery Barn that cost a lot more money. So I was able to make this tray and get the decor pieces. So everything that is in this picture, I was able to create for less than $10. I think that is definitely worth it. I love how this turned out. Out of all of the riser trays that I've made, I think this one is one of my favorite. Okay, so this is not a riser, but I just had to share this with you. This is such an easy DIY. So I found this really awesome glass container at Dollar Tree. It was $1.25, but I love the ribbed edge. So it's basically a glass with a straw and a lid on it. But when I saw this, I thought, oh my gosh, this would make such a pretty vase. So all I did was remove the tag. And I took a bunch of tulips that I got on Temu, and these were a really good price. I believe they were around $6, and they're the tulips that are kind of rubbery, so they have that real appearance to them. They're not a fabric tulip, and I cut them down a little bit, removing the bottoms so that they would be shorter in my vase. Then I took some jute twine and just wrapped it around the bottom portion of the tulips, almost like a bundle, and tied a knot into the jute. I didn't do a bow, I just did a knot, and then I removed the excess jute with my scissors. Then I just put them into the vase. I love this, such an easy project. And again, I know it's not a riser, but I really wanted to share this with you. And I thought this would go along really nicely with the risers that I showed you in this video. And now I have one of those larger Everybody Welcome signs, and again, I'm going to be using the back. So I am starting off with some sheepskin chalk paint, and I'm going to paint the entire egg with the sheepskin chalk paint. And while my egg was drying, I went ahead and cut out some round shapes using cardboard. Now you might be wondering what I'm going to be making with this, but this egg is going to be a bunny. Yes, a bunny. It is going to be so cute. So once I had the circle cut out on the cardboard and I was happy with the size, I went ahead and cut out another one. I want them to match because these are going to be the feet for my bunny rabbit. And next, using some Dollar Tree eggs, I painted them with the sheepskin paint as well. These are going to go onto the feet of the bunny rabbit. So I painted 2 of the eggs with the sheepskin chalk paint. And while that paint was still wet, I took a little bit of the folk art wax and I just added a little bit of wax to each of the eggs. The paint is still wet, so this will be really easy to blend. I just want to give a little bit of definition and I don't want it to be one solid color. And then I had these half beads, so I went ahead and painted them with a little bit of that sheepskin paint as well. Now I picked up this material at the Dollar Tree too, and yes, it was $1.25. So I actually got 2 packages of this material, and the 2 packages that I got, they weren't exactly the same color. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be using the same color for both of the feet. And I'm going to cut out 4 pieces of the material. Now I'm going to be using that material to cover the cardboard. So the material had to be larger than the cardboard, and then I used my hot glue gun and secured the material in place. I did go ahead and wrap the excess material around to the front or the back, however you want to look at it, of the cardboard round. Now this is a really fun way to give something a material look without having to sew it. I am not a seamstress. My sewing machine is my glue gun. And once I had that material on the one side, I did go ahead and use my hot glue gun around the front of the cardboard, and I put the other piece of the material on top. Now, once my hot glue had time to set up, I did go ahead and cut off all of the excess material. Now, for this material, I'm not going to secure the remnants to the back because the part that I'm cutting off is just the excess, and I do want to see a little bit of an edge between the material because the next step that I'm going to do is fray around that front edge. And I'm going to use my Cricut weeding tool again because that works really well to remove a little bit of the excess material and it makes it look older and frayed. Now I'm going to repeat this process for making the bunny ears as well. And I'm not going to show you the entire thing because you saw how I did this with the bunny feet. But I went ahead and used some more cardboard to make the pattern for the bunny ears, and then I cut them out. Now, what I enjoy about using cardboard as a pattern is it's pretty much readily available and it's free. So if I don't like how something turns out, I can simply go get another piece of cardboard and cut out a new pattern. I'm pretty happy with those bunny ears. So I did the same process with the material. I covered the back and then I used my hot glue gun around the front edge and secured another piece of the material. And I think you can see that this color material is a little bit different than the back color. It's the same pattern, but the colors were not quite the same, which for this project I think actually worked pretty well. Now this bunny ear, you can see it's kind of got a bend to it because I want the bunny ear to be bent over a little bit. So I just go ahead and secure that material to the front of my bunny ear. And then once it was dry, I cut away the excess. Now I need to have the pink section of my bunny ears. So I have this material, I believe this was an old t-shirt, and I'm just going to fold it down and use my hot glue gun so that it will be the center portion of the bunny ear. Again, no sewing was done at all for this project. It was all hot glue and cardboard, with the exception of the egg cutout from the Dollar Tree, which is the body of the bunny. And while my glue is drying, I just wanted to see the size of the center portion of the ear. And then I did trim it down a little bit. And once I was happy with that, I added some more glue to the entire length of the center part of the ear, which is the pink material. And then I just glued it in place onto the bunny ear. So here are my bunny feet, and I'm gonna go ahead and secure the Dollar Tree eggs to the bunny feet. And next I'm going to take 3 of the half beads that I painted with the sheepskin paint, and I'm going to put 3 beads on top of each of my bunny feet. The bead in the center is a little bit higher, and then I just put 1 bead on either side of that a little bit lower. And next I laid out the bunny feet onto the egg, which I did go ahead and distress with a little bit of wax as well. And then I glued the bunny feet to the egg. Pretty cute. Next, I took the bunny ears and I glued them to the top of the egg. And then I used some remnant pieces of that material and I just hot glued them around the ears and the top of the egg because you guessed it, this is going to be my bow. And then using just random pieces of that rope that I got from Amazon and some other ribbon, I just made a primitive bow and then added some pieces of unwound jute twine. I really like the waviness to it. I think it looks really pretty. But I did decide I did want my bunny to have a bow, so I'm going to attempt to make a bow with my frayed edge ribbon. So I cut a piece of the ribbon off, and then using some of that rope that I got from Amazon, I tied a knot around in between the center of the folded ribbon. And I made a loop with that ribbon and then I cut it in half. And I wanted it to have kind of a, wavy edge. So I cut off a portion of one side with both pieces of the loop. And I glued those down with hot glue to the center of all of the messy ribbon that I have underneath where the bow will be. There is my primitive bow for my bunny, but now he needs a face. So I took one more of those half beads and I glued it into the center. That is going to be his nose. And then using a little bit of pink acrylic paint, I wanted to make some little rosy cheeks on either side of the nose. And then using a Sharpie marker, I just drew some eyes. I could have done this with paint, but I find that using just a Sharpie marker like this is a lot easier and I have a little bit more control over the shape that I'm drawing. So just two little black circles, those are his eyes. And then I did take a little bit of white acrylic paint just to add like a catch light to each of his eyes. And next I took a little bit of craft glue and just put that on the side of the nose. So I did 2 dots of craft glue on each side of the nose. And then I used some unwound jute twine, and these are the bunny's whiskers. And I really like the craft glue for doing projects like this because I want it to dry clear. And if I used my hot glue gun, you would see the hot glue. But with this craft glue, you don't see it. And there is my Easter bunny. Oh my goodness, he's so cute. Here is my finished bunny rabbit. This was a really fun project, really easy. It did take a little bit of work. There's a lot of steps involved, but see how you can take something from the Dollar Tree that you hang on the wall and turn it into a really great piece for your holiday decorating. So I have this creamer container and I'm going to cut it in half. Now I'm going to save the bottom for another project, but for this project I'm going to be using the top half. So I'm going to remove the label that's on the outer edge of the creamer container and I'm going to trim away where I didn't cut it very evenly. And there's probably an easier way to do this, but I don't do things the easy way. Next I took a Dollar Tree styrofoam ball and I secured it to the top of the creamer container. That's going to be the top of my bunny. And if you're going to be doing this project, make sure you have a clean workspace. That's why I'm cleaning off my workspace and I'm going to take this faux fur. You can find smaller pieces of this at Dollar Tree. It's actually about this size, but I used all of mine, so I had to buy some. And I did find it on Amazon, so I will leave a link below. So I cut a section of the faux fur and then I just played around with it to get the bunny shape. So I'm only going to be using 1 square of this. So this is about 10 inches squared. And I just used some hot glue to secure the faux fur to the creamer bottle and the styrofoam ball. I hot glued a little bit at a time and worked my way up to the top of the styrofoam. Then I went back and used a little more hot glue and secured the edges of the faux fur together. I started at the bottom and worked my way all the way up to the top. Next, at the top, I put a little bit of hot glue and I basically squished the edges together. I don't know how else to say it, but literally put some hot glue on it and squished the two end pieces together. So there is the basic body of the bunny. Now I'm going to make the ears. And one way that you can do this is if you have some pipe cleaners or chenille stems, as they are also called, is you take two of them and you're going to twist them together. These will be the bunny's ears, and by using two of the chenille stems, it will make it so the ears are flexible and bendable. I used 4 chenille stems, 2 for each ear. Next, I took another piece of the faux fur and I cut it down so that it's a little bit larger than each of the ears. Then I took one of the chenille stems and cut out around it on 1/2 of the piece of the faux fur that I had already cut out. So on each half piece of the faux fur, I'm cutting out 2 bunny ears. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to use my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue each piece of the faux fur to the chenille stem. And once I had the faux fur down to the size I wanted it to be, I took my hot glue gun and put some hot glue on the chenille stem. Now, if you're going to be doing this, please be careful because the chenille stem has wire in the center of it, and it gets really hot with the hot glue. Once I had the first piece attached, then I put a little bit more glue on the chenille stem and I put the other piece of faux fur on top. So you won't see the chenille stem. Then I came back with some more hot glue and just secured all of the edges. I made sure to check all of the sides, the top, the bottom, everything, to make sure there was no openings between the 2 pieces of the faux fur. And then I repeated the process, so now I have 2 bunny ears. Then I took a little bit of hot glue and put it on one end of the bunny ear and then attached it to the bunny itself. And I attached it to the back portion where I had squished that fabric together at the top. I didn't fold it over, I just squished it together, and then I attached the bunny ears. Next, I came in with some blush, and the blush is going to be the pink center section of each of the bunny ears. And I used a paintbrush to apply the blush to the center of the ears. I don't think the color really matters as long as it's pink. Now I wanted this bunny to have a bow, so I took some Dollar Tree ribbon and I made a bow. I did 3 loops and hot glued them together and then wrapped some of that ribbon around the center. And because I have 3 pieces of that ribbon that I created the loops with, I folded one down and then cut through each of the loops. That is going to be the bottom of my bow, or the tails of my bow. And then I use some tiny little scissors to cut dovetails or whatever type of tails to give it a tail appearance. And then I used a little bit of hot glue to secure the bow to the bunny. And I tried to keep the bow right below the styrofoam ball. Now, I also wanted to show you a different way that you can make the ears for the bunny if you don't have the chenille stems. If you have craft sticks, they work really well too. So I cut a couple more pieces of the faux fur and I cut the craft sticks down to the size that I wanted them to be. And I put those into the center of the piece of faux fur that I had cut. Next, I cut away a lot of the excess faux fur. So it's basically outlining the craft stick. And then I used a little more hot glue, putting it onto the craft stick. And then I folded the fur on top of the glue. So these are going to be smaller ears, but they're still really cute bunny ears. And of course, I repeated the process, so I have 2 bunny ears. And if you don't have a creamer container, that's okay. You can just find something that has a bunny body shape and just secure the faux fur to it. I had this Dollar Tree pumpkin set. It was a pumpkin trio that I cut the top pumpkin off and then just put the faux fur around it. And once I was done with the body, then I just glued the ears in place. Now I did attach these ears to each other before securing them to the top of the bunny. I repeated the process with the blush, putting it down the center of each of the ears. And if you've seen the Frazzled Bunnies on Facebook or other places that people are making them, these are so cute and they are actually very easy to make. Now, once I had the bunny bodies, I did attach some half beads for the eyes. And then I had painted some wooden hearts with pink acrylic paint, and I used the heart as the nose for the bunny. And if you wanted to add some whiskers, you could totally do that, but I didn't want my bunnies to have whiskers. I think they're cute just like this. And this is the finished project. Look at how adorable these frazzled bunnies are. I think I could have lifted the bow a little bit on that one, But I do like the smaller bunny without the bow as well. I love all the different types of candlesticks that you can get at Dollar Tree. So I'm going to take these plastic planters and I'm going to take my B7000 and I'm going to secure the planter on top of the candlesticks. If you're new to crafting, B7000 glue is very similar to E6000, but I really like the consistency of it and it comes out very easily from the tube. I also like the precision tip that it has because I don't have to use a whole lot of the glue. And at first I thought I wanted to spray paint these little plant stands that I made, but in the end I decided it would be better if I painted them. So I brought them back into my craft room and I painted the bases or the candlesticks black, which was kind of an extra step because one of the candlesticks was already black. But that's okay. That's kind of how crafting goes sometimes, isn't it? And I wanted to make the planters have a little bit of a different look. So I painted them with some gray paint. And then I decided, I think I really want this to be more of a terracotta color. So I came back and painted the planters with the terracotta acrylic paint. And when that was dry, I came back and dry brushed a little bit just to add a little bit of texture to the planters. Then all I had to do was set my plants inside of the terracotta planters, and that's pretty much it. Like all of my projects, this was a really easy project to do, and I really like how it turned out. You could do any color you wanted to on these planters, but I definitely think that by adding the candlestick base to the plastic planters really elevates the look a little bit and makes it look a little more high-end. Now this was a really pretty picture that I found online and I thought would make a really nice addition to my springtime decor. So I printed it out with my printer and then I cut out the picture. It was a little bit larger than the box that I had, 5 inches by 5 inches, I think. And I did the same thing, put Mod Podge on, let it dry. Then I came back with my heat press and the Teflon sheet, and I secured the printed picture to the frame or the Dollar Tree wooden box. Then when that was secured, I came back with my tiny hand sander and just sanded off the edges. So now the picture is completely attached to the Dollar Tree wood box. But I wanted it to be a little bit brighter, so I came back with some acrylic markers and literally just colored in all of the flowers. I tried to keep the colors the same and just brighten up the colors of the flowers a little bit with the acrylic markers. It was pretty fun to add different colors to the flowers and really make this copy paper look more vibrant. And see what it looks like when it's all done? I added a light coat of Mod Podge, the spray-on high gloss Mod Podge, to make it look even brighter. And I love how this turned out. This is so cute. It's such a pretty Easter print, very vibrant, very colorful, and it was an easy addition for my springtime Easter decor. So for this craft, we're going to start with a Dollar Tree cutting board. Now I've had a really hard time lately finding these plastic cutting boards in my Dollar Tree, but if you can find them, I would highly encourage you to grab some. So this is just a plastic cutting board and I'm painting it with white chalk paint. I'm going to paint the entire surface with the white chalk paint, and it did take 2 coats of the chalk paint to really make sure that that red was not showing through. And after the paint had dried, I did put a coat of Mod Podge onto the chalk paint because the plastic surface is prone to scratches. So I find that if I use a coat of Mod Podge, it really helps to protect the painted surface. Then I took a little bit of Waverly Gray chalk paint and I used my favorite dry brushing technique to make this look a little bit aged onto the cutting board. And I don't want true brush strokes showing up on the cutting board. I want it to look a little bit older, and by using a dry brush style technique for painting, it really gives a nice finish. I think it gives a really nice farmhouse finish. But my cutting board is not going to be a cutting board. Oh no, this is going to have lots of flowers on it. And I had these bunches of lavender floral. So I picked off some of the flower pieces and then I added a little bit of greenery. Now at this point, I'm just kind of playing around and seeing what this is going to look like. Nothing has been glued down yet. Next, I added in some Dollar Tree baby's breath, or gypsophilia, I think it's called. And when I was happy with that, then it was time to secure all of these floral pieces onto the cutting board. So I started with the lavender first, and using my hot glue gun, I glued each individual piece to the cutting board. And I know that you know how to glue the individual pieces down, but I wanted to show the entire process of this because of the way I did it. I had 5 pieces of the lavender, and the center piece is actually higher and the other pieces are a little bit lower going down. Next, I secured the greenery pieces on, and the final part of the floral is attaching the baby's breath. I did separate the baby's breath into individual stems. I like that look a little bit better. It just looked more cohesive with the lavender and the greenery. Now for the next part, I'm going to be making a burlap pocket for the cutting board. So I had this burlap and I secured that to one side of the cutting board using my hot glue gun. Now I wanted this to look like a pocket, so I glued it in first and then bent over the burlap so that it will look like a pocket. And on the other side, I did the same process. I just folded the burlap over and then hot glued it in place. And because the burlap is pretty see-through, I did repeat the process with another row of the burlap ribbon. And the burlap ribbon that I'm using, it does not have the wire edge. I found that that worked best for this project. And with the second layer of the burlap ribbon, you can't see the stems of the flowers now, and that was what I wanted. Now I did repeat the process as I went down the cutting board, but the burlap was too big, so I did have to cut that ribbon down so it would fit onto the cutting board. But it was easy to keep the ribbon straight because of the burlap. You can see the lines that act as a guide as you're cutting. And just like the first layer of the burlap, I did 2 layers for the lower section as well. And once the burlap was all secured onto the front of the cutting board, I took some jute twine and I wrapped that around the middle section of the cutting board, so in between the 2 layers of the burlap. And I secured this in place with hot glue and a craft stick on the back of the cutting board. And then I just wrapped the jute twine around the cutting board. Now I wasn't having this all go in the same direction. I wanted it to be spread out a little bit while I was wrapping it. And once I was happy with the jute twine wrapping, then I secured the jute to the back of the cutting board with another piece of craft stick. And for the finishing touch, I did want to add a small bow, so I just did a regular bow out of jute twine. And I glued it in place over where I had wrapped the jute. I think that looks so pretty. And this is the finished project. I think it looks adorable. I really am so happy with how this turned out. I do want to make more of these, but again, it's really hard to find these cutting boards lately in my Dollar Tree. What about your Dollar Tree? Do they have cutting boards? Now, I found these large Easter eggs at Dollar Tree. And of course I have this jute twine that I also found at Dollar Tree. But what I want to do is see if I can make a basket with the bottom of the Easter egg. So this bottom portion of the Easter egg, it will stand up on its own. So I'm just going to take some jute twine and I'm going to cover the entire surface of the egg. I'm not going to use the top portion of the egg for now, but as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I have a perfect project for the top of that egg that I will have to share with you in a future video. But for now, I'm just focusing on putting the jute twine all the way around that egg. So I'm just going to use some hot glue and line up the jute twine and basically wrap it around the egg. And I don't have it around the very top because I'm going to come back with some larger twine around the top and the bottom of the egg to help really make this look like a basket. But the center portion of it is going to just be this thin jute from Dollar Tree. It really doesn't take that long to wrap this all the way around. It might seem like it does, but I don't know. I kind of enjoy it. It's fun to make something so pretty and so perfect. Now, once I had the main body portion of the basket or the egg covered, then I came back with some larger twine, and I got this from Amazon, and I wrapped that around the top edge of the egg. I did go around the top several times because I really want that top portion to stand out so that you'll be able to see the difference. And once I had the top done, then I turned my attention to the bottom of the egg. And I think you can see it really is starting to look like a basket. So I repeated that same process that I did on the top. I wrapped the larger jute around the bottom edge of the egg. And again, I did this several times just to make this pop out and stand out and make it look like the bottom of the basket. Now, once I was done with the basket portion, I took a floral stem because it has really nice bendable wire, and I took the smaller jute twine and I wrapped that all the way around that wire stem. I did have it in a U type shape before I started wrapping the jute, because this is going to be the handle for my basket, so I thought it would be easier to have it in that handle shape from the beginning. And once I had completely covered the stem with the jute, then I came back the opposite direction to have it build up and be a second layer of the jute. It definitely looks like a handle to a basket now. And then I just cut away the excess jute. I used a little bit of hot glue on either side of the U shape, and then just secured it inside the egg, or inside what is now my basket. But I did want my basket to have a bow on the front, so I took some raffia and I just made a simple bow. And then I secured the bow to the front of the basket. I love the difference in the color between the raffia and the twine. I think that's so pretty. I did want to add a little bit of something extra, so I took a heart-shaped button and I just put that into the center of the bow. And then I wanted to put some carrots into my basket, but I don't really like the tops of these carrots from Dollar Tree, so I did go ahead and remove all of the tops. And I think you can see the stems over on the side. Well, those are going to be the tops for my carrots. So I just cut the individual stems off of the original stem. And then using a little bit of hot glue onto the stem portion, I just pushed the new stems down into the carrot. I don't know about you, but I think those carrots look a lot better. Then I took some Spanish moss and I put that into the basket. And then I took a couple of the carrots and put them inside. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh, I am so happy with how this project turned out. I think of all of the projects, this one is by far my most favorite. And by simply removing the greenery from the top of the carrots and adding in some different type of faux greenery, I think it makes the carrots look a lot better. Even when my husband saw the carrots in the video when I was editing it, he was like, those look like little carrots. I didn't realize they weren't real. So for myself, I think that is definitely a win when my husband actually comments on something that I've crafted.
2 and ideally 3 or 4 Dollar Tree cutting boards. It's great if you can find them in different sizes, but it's not a deal breaker. You'll also need something to create the space between the tiers. You can use wooden dowels, painted blocks, tumbling tower blocks, or the reliable Dollar Tree candlestick. You'll also need a very strong adhesive like, you guessed it, E6000 or B7000. The most important part of this project is getting the center support in the center of your cutting boards. Now I used a measuring tape to center my candle holders. Then you secure the centers to the bottom of the cutting boards. You repeat the steps for each tier that you have, and then you're going to secure the tiers together. Now you want to let everything dry completely. The glue needs plenty of time to cure so that it's strong and stable. Once it's dry, you can either paint or stain the entire piece to give it one cohesive look. Now this is where the fun really begins. You get to style your masterpiece. You can use it as a seasonal centerpiece, decorating it with miniature pumpkins, fall leaves or ornaments, and even some fake snow for the holidays. This tiered tray is definitely a versatile piece that you can change up all year long, an impressive build that started with nothing more than a few humble cutting boards.
So these are the Flame Glow solar lights that I got. And what I want to do is I'm going to remove the bottom. Now I also have this plastic bowl from Dollar Tree. This is the one I showed you, and it is quite large, which will make it perfect for holding these solar lights. So I'm going to take some Dollar Tree black rocks and I'm going to put those into the bowl. So that's one bag of the rocks. And I'm going to add a second bag of rocks. And a third bag of the rocks. Now, if I wanted to, I could probably add at least another bag or two, but with 3 bags, that definitely makes it sturdy enough that it's not going to blow away. So now I'm just going to take the solar lights and I'm going to put them into the rocks. I'm going to try and get them so that they're down pretty deep, almost to the bottom. That's going to help secure them in place in case it gets windy, which, if I'm being honest, is pretty much every day where I live. Now, you could use other type of solar lights that Dollar Tree has if you can't find these. I just really like these because they have the flickering flame. This is such a nice addition to my outdoor patio area, and I think it looks really nice, but the best part was it was so easy to make. Okay, so here's that adorable pineapple tumbler that I found. It does light up, which I'm not really going to be able to use that in my craft, but I have never seen something like this at Dollar Tree. It is just so cute. So what I'm going to do is take the lid off of the pineapple. Then I removed the straw from the top, and I wanted to make sure that this was going to fit together. Yes, it fits together very easily. So now I'm going to take this Mayan gold paint. Now this is by Folk Art, and I got it at Hobby Lobby, but they do also have it on Amazon. So I just took the gold paint and I painted the pineapple. And while I was painting this, I thought, you know, this would look really nice if it was white too. And I think it'll make a really unique piece for my decorating. And this paint by Folk Art is so nice. This was 1 coat of paint. It looks so good. So now I just had to come back and paint the top of the pineapple. This was a little bit more challenging, and I think if you did this with spray paint, it would probably look a little bit better, but I do like the texture that this Folk Art paint gives to whatever surface it is that I'm working on. This is the pineapple being displayed, and I think this is so pretty. It's so fun, and it was definitely affordable at $1.25. These are the larger bamboo cutting boards that Dollar Tree has, and I was so grateful that my Dollar Tree finally had them. They're exactly the same as the smaller cutting board. As you can see, I have the smaller one next to the larger one, but the larger one is perfect for so many crafts. And I'm going to be attempting to do a chippy paint look on this cutting board. So I wanted to start by staining the wood. I wanted the bamboo to have a darker wood look, and I thought that this gel stain would give me the look that I wanted. Now, this stain was in oak, and it's not quite as dark as I wanted it to be. So then I found my walnut gel stain and I put that on top of the oak stain that I had already done. I wanted to see if this would be a little bit darker, and it is a little bit darker, and it did get into the creases a little bit more, but it still wasn't as dark as I wanted. So I did come back with some burnt umber paint, and I just put a layer of the burnt umber on top of the stain. And then I used my heat gun to help it dry a little bit faster. I don't use my heat gun a lot, but for me, it was a worthwhile purchase. It was around $10 on Amazon. And it really does help to speed up the process of drying a project. So once it was dry, then I came back with some Dollar Tree petroleum jelly. So this is Vaseline. And I randomly put a little bit of the Vaseline just in random areas on top of the cutting board. I don't want to cover the entire cutting board because I'm going to come back with paint. And the goal of using the Vaseline is to help remove some of the paint, so you'll be able to see the darker layer. So it's just going to remove some of the paint and give it that chippy look. At least that's what I'm hoping it's going to do. Now, once I had the Vaseline all over the cutting board, then I came back with just some white acrylic paint, and this is, I believe this is Apple Barrel. It's very affordable when you buy it like in a bigger bottle. It was like $2, but I just put a coat of that acrylic paint over top of the entire cutting board. I did make sure to get all of the edges as well. Now this is what it looks like when it's dry. You can still see some of the shiny parts of the Vaseline. And then I just used a scraping tool to go over the cutting board, and you can see it removes some of the paint where The Vaseline was spread onto it, but the rest of the paint stays in place. I have wanted to try this for so long, and I just never felt like I could do it, but I am so happy with this painting technique. I decided I wanted to turn this into a tray, so I had these drawer pulls that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I thought they would look great on the tray. So I used a little bit of B7000 adhesive on either end, and then I came back with a tiny bit of hot glue just to get that instant stick. And then I just secured the drawer pull on the short side of the cutting board, and I repeated the process with another drawer pull on the opposite side. Now I do want to raise this tray up a bit, so I'm going to use a little bit of Dollar Tree wood glue and then some white beads that I had. They had already been painted, so it was perfect for this project. And I just put the beads onto little dots of glue that I had on the bottom of the cutting board. Now, I was having so much fun with this chippy paint technique that I wanted to try it again, but I wanted to use paint this time. So I came back with some blue paint, and once that had dried, I did the Vaseline technique again. Then I came back with the white acrylic paint and I painted that all over the top of the cutting board. And once the paint had time to dry, I did the same thing with a scraper to remove the paint from the cutting board. And this was one of the yard signs, the garden stakes that I found at Dollar Tree, and I want to put this onto the cutting board. So I removed the garden stake part of it. And I wanted it to be raised off of the cutting board, so I just used some tumbling tower blocks and I secured them to the cutting board with some B7000 adhesive along with a little bit of hot glue, again for the instant stick. That is so pretty just like it is, but I decided I wanted to add something a little bit extra. I had made this bow using scraps of ribbon, and I took a button that was in the shape of a flower and I put that in the center, and I really liked that. I thought that would look so pretty on this piece, but then I remembered that I got this raffia garland from Dollar Tree too, and I really wanted to show you how simple it is to use this. And this raffia is actually really nice, so I just removed one of the garland pieces and unsecured the raffia from the back, and then I just tied it into a bow. This raffia is the perfect size for tying into bows. It's a lot easier than the big bundles of raffia, and you get a lot of it that comes complete on this garland. So I just made a simple bow, cut off the end so that it would be a little bit shorter, and then used a little hot glue and just secured it to the bottom of the watering can. And I did want to be able to hang up the sign, so I took some twine and I made a hanger for the back of the sign. And I used some craft sticks to help keep the twine in place, remove the excess. And there's my sign. I am so tickled with how this sign turned out. Actually, the whole chippy paint process and how easy it is, oh my gosh, it is so much fun. And I can see a lot of chippy paint projects in my future. If I'd known it was this easy, I would have been doing it a long time ago.
So for this project, you'll need a Dollar Tree bamboo cutting board. You'll also need some gel stain, paints, and paint brushes, some ribbon, fabric, Mod Podge, and an image that you can decoupage. So we're going to start by staining the cutting board. If you've never tried to stain a bamboo cutting board, it can be a little bit challenging. This is why I like to use the gel stain. You apply the stain to the cutting board and you let it set for a minute or two before you wipe it away. If it's lighter than you want, then you can add a light coat of brown paint. I use some burnt umber to darken up the color just a bit. Now once that's dry, on a little less than half of the board, you're going to paint a layer of white chalk paint. When that's dry, take some black paint and smaller paint brushes to paint some random black shapes all over the bottom of the cutting board of where you just painted white. Now once that's dry, you can take some watered down burnt umber paint and load it onto a paintbrush and just tap it over the white part of the cutting board. This is going to give you little brown splatters and spots all over that area. And once everything is dry, then you'll want to cover the entire cutting board with a light coat of Mod Podge. While it's drying, go find a cow image. I found this one on Creative Fabrica and I printed it on mulberry paper. Well, I printed it twice because the first time I forgot to change the setting on my printer to high quality, so I got faint lines on the paper. But I decided to cut both of them out and use some craft glue to glue the two images together. Next, you'll take the cutout cow and position it onto your cutting board. Then you want to cover the cow with a Teflon sheet or butcher paper and either use an iron or a mini heat press and run that over the image. The heat will reactivate the Mod Podge and secure the image to the cutting board. I did take some dark walnut distressing stain and ran that around the edge of the cow. Next, you're going to take some ribbon and cover up the portion of the cutting board between the light and the dark, and then secure it with glue. And if you're like me and want to be a little bit extra, you can take some finer ribbon and put on the top and bottom over the larger piece of ribbon. Then I made a bow from different ribbons and I attached it to one side of the cutting board where the ribbon is. Then I made a tiny wood sign using a large crafting stick, and I used rubber stamps to write out the word howdy. I cut out several different sizes of ribbon to layer underneath the little wood sign. You can make the fabric look a little more textured by fraying the edges, then secure the fabric to the opposite side of where you placed your bow and attach the sign. If you want to be able to hang this up, you'll need to add a hanger to the back. I used B7000 adhesive and twine to make a hanger. The B7000 is pretty similar to E6000 and it's also a very strong adhesive. This will help to keep the hanger in place and your sign hanging up. And that's it. For just a couple of dollars, you've created a piece of decor that's packed with farmhouse personality. So for this project, I'm going to be using two cutting boards, one of the larger bamboo boards and one of the older, smaller cutting boards. It's the same type, but it's just a lot smaller. I took the smaller board and I cut it in half using my scroll saw. Then I sanded the corners to round them out just a little bit more. Next, I painted it to look like a watermelon. I used different shades of green paint and a thin line of white paint, and then some red for the heart of the watermelon. I just love watermelon. And once I was happy with the painting of the watermelon itself, then I painted the seeds. I added a little bit of white around the edges of the seeds to make it stand out just a little bit more. And I also took some white paint and I put a little bit on the corners of the watermelon as well. Next, I applied a little bit of paint to the larger cutting board because I wanted to make it look a little more rustic. So I used different shades of black and white and actually blended a little bit to get some gray. And once I was happy with that and it had time to dry, then I drilled some holes into the top to make a wire hanger. Next, I took two tumbling tower blocks and secured them to the back of my watermelon, and using a little more glue, I secured the watermelon to the larger sign. I made a simple bow using some material and secured it to the hanger, along with a little bit of raffia. And just like that, I have an adorable watermelon sign that I can use for my summer decorating. It's just a sweet, simple project that will make you smile. So like I said, I still had a little piece of cutting board from my previous project, so I sanded all of the edges and I rounded them off a bit. Now this is a perfect canvas to create a sign. So I gave the cutting board a base coat of paint. Chalk paint is great for this because it gives a beautiful matte rustic finish. You can pick a neutral color like white or gray, or go for a color that matches your home. 2 coats will give you the best coverage. Now once the paint is dry, it's time to add your words. If you have a cutting machine, you can easily make up a vinyl decal. Just apply it to the center of the board using a credit card or one of the Cricut tools to smooth out any air bubbles. You can also create a stencil for these signs. They're so much fun to work with. Now, when I'm using a stencil to make sure I don't get bleed through, let me give you a secret tip. Once you have the stencil in place, apply a light layer of Mod Podge to the open area of the stencil where you're going to be applying the paint. This will help to keep your paint where you want it to be. Then you can use a sponge or a stencil brush to dab the color on. For the stencil that I made using my Cricut machine, I actually used some stencil paste. It's basically paint that's a little bit thicker. And then I just used a little piece of silicone. This actually came with the stencil paint, and I used that to put the paint onto the stencil on my sign. The key to getting clean lines is to use a small amount of paint and dab it up and down rather than brushing it side to side if you're using a brush. And while the paint is still wet, this is when you want to remove the stencil. If you wanted to, you could drill 2 small holes at the top and thread a piece of ribbon, wire, or twine through it to create a hanger, or you can just rest the sign on a small display holder. The beauty of this project is how simple it is.